listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, Ozzy Osbourne, the heavy metal legend, has passed away overnight at the age of 76. We unpack his extraordinary influence on music and culture, his battles with addiction, and why he was the original king of reality TV. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Wednesday, the 23rd of July. The Labor Party has introduced legislation today that it says will strengthen regulations in the childcare industry. It comes after a number of allegations of child sex abuse in centres across the country. Education Minister Jason Clare has promised to cut funding to centres that breach safety requirements and also increase on-the-spot checks. I spoke earlier with Independent Senator David Pocock on Channel 7, who says we need widespread reform.
Clearly, there needs to be a higher level of scrutiny on early learning education centres. And I'd love to actually start the broader conversation about what should early childhood education look like in this country over the long term. Is this something that we want privatised, or is this something that should be provided like schooling and see a lot more not-for-profit community centres being open and supported across the country?
The CEO of OpenAI, which operates ChatGPT, has told the US Federal Reserve that AI will replace entire job categories. In his address, Sam Altman singled out the customer service profession and also healthcare, suggesting that the diagnostic capabilities of AI had surpassed humans. The AI boss also raised concerns about what he calls the significant impending fraud crisis that could be supercharged by AI voice and video cloning. And the US Justice Department is planning to meet with convicted sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving a 20-year jail sentence for her involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein case. President Trump avoided questions about the new development, saying the focus should be on allegations surrounding former US President Barack Obama.
I don't really follow that too much. It's sort of a witch hunt, just a continuation of the witch hunt. The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election, they tried to rig the election and they got caught.
Mr. Obama's office has released a rare statement saying the claims are outrageous, adding these bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction.
I'm Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness. Rock and roll!
Now it's time to get into our deep dive with contemporary music expert Dr. Lachlan Goold on the rollercoaster life of the Prince of Darkness. Lead singer of Black Sabbath and reality television star Ozzy Osbourne has passed away after battling drug addictions, and later he was fighting Parkinson's disease. We take a look back at how it all started, his troubled life, and how Ozzy rose to superstardom both on the stage and screen.
Sharon! Sharon!
I love you all. I love you more than life itself. You're all man.
Lachlan, thanks so much for joining us. So many tributes today for the loss of what many have called a music legend. But you think Ozzy Osbourne was more than music. Take us through his legacy.
Oh, well, he will be forever known as one of the forefathers of heavy metal. So creating a whole new sort of style and approach to making music. And it was, at the end of the 60s, it really sort of put an end to flower power and, said to the hippies, that's not really what we want to do. Along came this completely different style that almost was a complete accident. But, it worked for Ozzy and he built his career around it.
So take us through from the beginning, because he has openly admitted he did have a very, very troubled childhood, but kind of sought solace through music and, the creative industry.
Yeah, well, he left school at 15 and had various factory jobs, spent a bit of time in jail, like 6 weeks for a petty crime. And music just seemed like an industrialized Birmingham, coming from a working class family. It just seemed like this kind of greener pastures to experiment in. And with him and Black Sabbath, they really did sort of change things. And I think around the invention, or the so-called invention, of heavy metal, a lot of it also goes to the guitar player Tony Iommi, a lot through the fact that he lost parts of his fingers, which changed the way that he approached the guitar. And he would tune a string down so that he could play chords with one finger, and used a lot of distortion to make it sound bigger. And that, coupled with Ozzy Osbourne's kind of high-pitched voice, it really created this whole new paradigm of music. So Black Sabbath are often, associated with the occult and anti-religious style things, but really they were just talking about the darker side of life, and they often sort of, equated to like horror films and things like that, rather than actually they rarely actually really mentioned religion that much.
Sorry, you dropped the lead there. How did he lose his fingers, the guitarist?
Tony Iommi, well, it was actually on his last day of work before he was planning to dedicate his life to music. And he was filling in for someone in a sheet metal. Well, he worked in a sheet metal factory, but he was on a different part in the line, and he was feeding a piece of sheet metal through a machine, and it kind of had a bit more momentum than he thought.
Oh, wow.
And his fingers got stuck in this machine, and he reefed them out, and he lost the tip of his ring finger and his middle finger, which you would think, well, that's it, your guitar playing days are over. But he molded a fingertip by burning a plastic bottle to extend, because it was just the tip of his finger that got cut off, but that extended his finger so that he had that sort of action so he could play the guitar. But the big thing was dropping the E string down to D, which... And he also, because of his fingers, he used quite light gauge strings, so tuning it down made it a little bit easier, less stress on his fingers. And that created this whole new sound that was a little bit deeper on the guitar. And then with Ozzy's higher voice, you had that sort of separation between the melody and these detuned riffs. And it was the beginning of a whole new sound.
And a whole new sound. You make a great analogy there, Lachlan. In regards to Black Sabbath, I think the stats were they sold 100 million albums. Tell us about the influence Ozzy Osbourne, as part of Black Sabbath, had not on just music, but culture overall during that time.
Well, yeah, there was that initial explosion sort of into the 70s out of the hippie movement, like this it was almost like a reality check, I think. And, there were other people around the same time. I can hear people yelling at the radio, what about Led Zeppelin? What about Jimi Hendrix? But they are, of course, all part of the picture as well. And even the Beatles got heavier around that sort of period. But Black Sabbath really was a different sound. It really was that little bit deeper and darker, and the concepts they included in their music were a bit heavier. But through that success, it led to drugs and alcohol, problems with drugs and alcohol, which, Ozzy ended up being kicked out of the band that he started 10 years after they began, because it was claimed that he was too drunk to continue, but everyone was quite drunk the whole time. The whole band were quite drunk, but everyone pointed their finger at Ozzy, and it was actually Ozzy's future wife, Sharon, that sacked him from the band.
I was just about to make that point, because his second wife, I understand Ozzy actually had 6 children. He had 2 children with his first wife, adopted her child, and then had 3 with Sharon, who was actually the daughter of the original band manager. And then if you don't know Ozzy for Black Sabbath, many people know Ozzy as the original reality star of a reality show with Sharon before the Kardashians.
Yes. So when we talk about culture, we've got Ozzy's influence in Black Sabbath. Then he goes on to a very illustrious solo career. It's part of his journey through the solo career where a lot of his career, he hated touring. And I think it's that relationship with drugs. I think he always, if he wasn't feeling good, would go on stage and need a stimulant to keep him, nice and energized. And it felt like a trap to him. So from 1992, he had a tour called No More Tours. Then he had another tour later called No More Tours 2. He had another tour called Retirement Sucks. So he sort of had this battle with touring. But through that, Sharon and Ozzy created this festival called Ozfest. And that festival led to a relationship with MTV. And they kept having these little bits in amongst the clips on MTV. And then MTV decided, hey, how about we should start doing full shows? And the Osbournes was one of their first shows. And it was incredibly successful, a worldwide hit where it was really just inside the life of a famous rock star who's already punished his brain. It was pretty evident that a few brain cells had been lost without saying anything too disparaging. But yeah, the Osbournes changed culture immeasurably, almost more than what Black Sabbath did. We wouldn't have Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and, that reality TV format just sort of took off after the success of that show.
And Lachlan, you mentioned it before, Ozzy struggled for a long time with drug and alcohol addictions and also with violent outbursts with his relationships. And then he was sober for a long time and then fell off the wagon and was quite open about he still struggled with addictions. Yeah,
he struggled many, many times throughout his career. And it was probably most visible through the Osbournes, where it was, rumoured he was clean, and then it was pretty obvious that he wasn't. And then there was, a few violent episodes with Sharon, court cases between family members. It all got quite dark for Ozzy a few times around his struggles with addiction. And famously, he went to the Betty Ford Clinic at one stage and, to clean up. And the first thing he did when he walks in is say, "Where's the bar?" Because that's what he's used to doing when he walks into a room, is going straight to the bar to get a drink. But yeah, he had a very troubled relationship with alcohol, and perhaps it wasn't until he started getting sick, I think, that he really started to kind of get on top of those things. But, I don't really know.
So, Lachlan, in regards to the legacy, everyone says he has passed away. We know he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He made, incredibly so, his last appearance at a concert just weeks ago. Tell us about that.
Well, not only did he play with Black Sabbath, but he also did a solo set. So he did 2 sets at a festival concert. So we're talking tens of thousands of people. He couldn't walk, so he was positioned in this throne at the front of the stage. And, it's just incredible to think that someone who is so far along with their Parkinson's can sit there and entertain so many people for more than 2 hours. It's quite an effort. And I think many people thought that he wouldn't make it to the end of the gig, before it happened. But he made it, and I think the crowd really helped sort of carry him along, singing along with all the songs, because, he was the focus of the night, and he had a lot of help from the audience, and, by all measures, it was a great gig.
So for you today, we're paying tribute to Ozzy Osbourne. How do you think he will be remembered? Many may say we saw him perform on stage. Famously, he bit off the head of a bat, right? And apparently there were reports he bit the head off a dove. How do you think Ozzy Osbourne will be remembered?
Well, there is those controversies, and I guess they always will be mentioned, like the biting the head off a bat, which, was a complete accident, someone throwing a bat up on stage, and people used to throw rubber things and items of clothing on the stage, and he thought it was a rubber bat and he just bit the head off it, which I don't know. I wouldn't do that if someone threw it, but yeah. Sharon being Sharon, it was immortalised with a toy. 20 years after the event, you could buy a commemorative toy of the bat without a head on it. So, never one to walk away from an opportunity to market something. But I would like to think that he'll be remembered as someone who changed culture, was endlessly creative, and, a fantastic entertainer. Because we've got heavy metal, We've got his solo career. He really did influence the grunge movement in the 90s, which is, a big part of my life and my career in the recording studio was through that time. And then, with his influence on television with the Osbournes, it's hard to sort of sum it all up into one sentence. But he certainly did a lot.
He did a lot indeed, and he will forever be remembered. We really appreciate your insight and for joining us today, Lachlan. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tash.
That was two-time ARIA award-winning producer and lecturer in contemporary music, Dr. Lachlan Goold. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.